where everyone matters, where dignity is not a privilege for the few, but a birthright for all. This is Emmanuel's dream. This is his legacy, and it's now ours to carry forward. As they lowered Emmanuel's casket into the ground, something extraordinary happened. It started with one person. A security guard from somewhere in the crowd began to sing, not a sad dirge, but something hopeful, a Yoruba hymn about legacy and continuation. One voice became 2, then 10, then hundreds. Soon the entire gathered mass was singing together, their voices rising in harmony that transcended language, class, and background. Mrs. Okafor stood there, tears streaming down her face, and realized that this was exactly what Emmanuel would have wanted. Not mourning, but celebration. Not an ending, but a continuation. Not death, but transformation. After the burial, as people began to disperse, Mrs. Okafor noticed something. The CEOs weren't rushing back to their cars. The government officials weren't immediately checking their phones. Instead, people were talking to each other, really talking. The managing director of a bank was deep in conversation with a market woman. A senator was listening intently to a young man who swept streets for a living. A society matriarch was laughing with a house help, sharing stories like old friends. Emmanuel had brought them together one last time, and in death, as in life, he was teaching them to see each other. That evening, Mrs. Okafor went to Emmanuel's house. His children had asked her to go through his study, to take anything she wanted as a remembrance. She sat in his chair, surrounded by his books, his notes, his lifetime of wisdom captured on paper. On his desk, she found a leather-bound journal, the one he had mentioned at the garden party all those years ago, where he wrote what he learned each day. With trembling hands, she opened it. The entries went back decades, observations about life, about people, about dignity. She read through them slowly, each page a treasure. And then she found the last entry, written just days before his death. Today I learned that legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you leave within people. I am dying, and I am at peace, not because my life was perfect, it wasn't. Not because I achieved everything I wanted, I didn't, but because I know that the message will continue. Mrs. Okafor will carry it forward. Chidi will carry it forward. Joy and Blessing and Arekunle and Idowu and thousands of others will carry it forward. I started this journey as a gateman to remember humility, but what I learned was so much more. I learned that the gate between people is not made of iron, it's made of fear, of pride, of forgetting our shared humanity. And the key to that gate is simple. See people. Really see them. My time is ending, but the revolution continues, and that brings me more joy than any personal achievement ever could, because true success is not individual, it's collective, it's lifting while you climb, it's remembering while you rise, it's staying human while you achieve. To whoever reads this after I'm gone, don't mourn me, continue me, live with dignity, treat others with respect. See people. That's all. That's everything. Mrs. Okafor closed the journal and held it to her chest, sobbing. Emmanuel was gone, but his voice would never be silent. Not as long as she lived, not as long as anyone who had been touched by him continued to live his truth. The next Saturday, the weekly gathering at the Emmanuel Center for Human Dignity was different. There was grief in the air, but also determination. People shared stories about how Emmanuel had changed their lives, how a simple conversation with him had altered their entire trajectory. Chidi stood to speak. The young man who had arrived 5 years ago in a Range Rover, full of American business school arrogance, was now humble, thoughtful, and deeply committed to the movement. "My father is here today," Chidi said, and Chief Okonkwo stood briefly, acknowledging the crowd. 5 years ago, he would never have come here. He thought this movement was nonsense. He thought treating people with dignity was weakness. But Emmanuel changed him, changed me, changed all of us. He paused, composing himself. Professor Emmanuel taught me that real power isn't about dominating others, it's about elevating them. Real success isn't about climbing alone, it's about bringing others with you. And real legacy isn't about buildings or money, it's about changed lives. Chief Okonkwo stood again and asked to speak. The crowd went silent. This man had been one of the movement's biggest critics. What would he say now? "I'm 70 years old," he began, his usually gruff voice softer now. "I've spent most of those years being wrong about what matters. I built an empire, but I built it on the backs of people I never saw, people I never valued, people whose names I never learned." He looked around the room. Emmanuel didn't just teach us to be nice to poor people. That would be charity, and charity maintains inequality because it keeps the giver above and the receiver below. Emmanuel taught us something revolutionary, that there is no above and below. There's just us, all of us, equal in our humanity, different in our circumstances, but fundamentally the same. His voice grew stronger. "In the time I have left on this earth, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to use my wealth, my influence, my position, not to make myself bigger, but to make others visible. I'm going to commit my resources to building more dignity academies, to supporting the Dignity Fund, to changing how business is done in this country." He looked directly at Mrs. Okafor. "Mrs. Okafor, you once told me that legacy is how we make people feel. I want my legacy to be that I learned, that I changed, that even an old, stubborn man can open his eyes and finally see. Emmanuel gave me that gift, and I'm going to spend whatever time I have left honoring that gift." The applause was thunderous, and in that moment, Mrs. Okafor understood something profound. Emmanuel's death wasn't an ending, it was a catalyst. His absence was creating a vacuum that others were stepping up to fill. The revolution was becoming bigger than any one person. It was becoming a movement, a culture, a new way of being. Over the next year, the changes accelerated. The Gateman revolution became official policy in the Lagos state government. All state employees, from the governor to the newest janitor, went through mandatory dignity training, not corporate sensitivity training, but real, meaningful education about seeing people, about respecting everyone, about understanding that public service meant serving all the public, not just the powerful. Companies that embraced dignity principles found something surprising. Their productivity increased, employee loyalty skyrocketed, innovation flourished. Why? Because when people feel valued, they give their best. When workers feel seen, they invest themselves fully. When humans are treated like humans, they respond with creativity, dedication, and excellence. The Dignity Academies multiplied. By the end of the year, there were 20 across Nigeria, each adapted to its community, but all sharing the same core principle. Every child matters. Every child deserves excellence. Every child should be seen. And the children were thriving, not just academically, but emotionally and spiritually. They carried themselves differently, spoke differently, dreamed differently, because they had been told consistently and convincingly that they mattered. And children who believe they matter grow into adults who demand to be treated with dignity and who treat others the same way. But the most profound changes were the small ones, the daily ones, the invisible ones. A wealthy woman in Ikoyi who used to shout at her housemaid now sat with her over morning tea, asking about her day, her dreams, her challenges. The housemaid, initially confused, gradually opened up, and both women discovered they had more in common than different. Both worried about their children. Both struggled with aging parents. Both had dreams they'd put aside.
both were just human beings trying to navigate life. A bank executive who used to rush past the security guard each morning now stopped to chat. 5 minutes of conversation, nothing profound, just, "How are you? How's your family? Did your daughter pass her exam?" But those 5 minutes changed both their days. The executive arrived at his desk feeling more human, more grounded. The security guard stood a little taller, feeling seen, feeling valued. A teacher who used to focus only on the bright students from wealthy families now paid equal attention to the quiet child in the back whose uniform was worn but clean. She discovered that child had an extraordinary gift for mathematics. She nurtured that gift. Years later, that child would become an engineer who designed affordable housing solutions for low-income communities, all because one teacher decided to see.
These small stories multiplied into thousands, then millions. A culture was shifting. Not completely, not perfectly, but unmistakably. There was still resistance, of course. Old habits die hard. Some people continued to treat domestic workers as lesser. Some companies gave lip service to dignity while maintaining oppressive practices. Some schools still favored wealthy students over poor ones. But now there was a counter-narrative. Now there were people pushing back. Now there was a language for what was wrong and a vision for what could be right. Emmanuel had given them that language, that vision, and it was spreading like seeds carried by wind, taking root in unexpected places. 2 years after Emmanuel's death, Mrs. O turned 50. She could have thrown herself a lavish party. She certainly had the means. Instead, she did something different. She invited everyone who worked in her company to her home, not to work, not for a corporate event, just to celebrate together. The CEO and the cleaner, the CTO and the security guard, the CFO and the kitchen staff, all equals for one evening. They ate together, jollof rice and fried rice, chicken and fish, fruit and cake. They laughed together, they shared stories, they played music, they danced. At one point, Joy, the cleaner whose letter had moved Mrs. O to tears years ago, pulled her aside. "Madam," she said, tears in her eyes, "thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for treating me like I matter. Because of you, my daughter believes she can become anything. She's in secondary school now, getting excellent grades. She wants to be a doctor." Mrs. O hugged her tightly. She can be a doctor, and you know why? Not just because of the scholarship we provided, but because she has a mother who taught her dignity, who showed her what it means to work hard, to be proud of honest work, to carry yourself with respect regardless of circumstances. You taught her that, Joy. You. "But you taught me that I was worth teaching," Joy whispered. They stood there, employer and employee, wealthy and struggling, but really just two women who had learned to see each other's humanity. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Mrs. O stood alone in her mansion. 10 years ago, this house had been her temple to success, her proof that she'd made it. Now it felt different, not like a trophy, but like a tool, a resource to be used for something bigger than herself. She thought about Emmanuel, about the old man who opened her gate and opened her eyes, about his gentle wisdom, about his revolutionary simplicity, about his insistence that every person matters. She walked out to the gate. The new security guard, a young man named Tunde, stood at attention. "Good evening, Tunde," she said. "How was your day?" "Very good, madam. Thank you for asking." "Your mother, is she feeling better? You mentioned she was ill." Tunde's face lit up. "Yes, madam. The medicine you helped us buy, it's working. She's much stronger now." "I'm so glad. Tell her I'm praying for her continued recovery." "I will, madam. Thank you. You're very kind." Mrs. O smiled. "No, Tunde, I'm not kind. I'm just learning to be human. There's a difference." She looked up at the stars above Lagos, bright despite the city lights. "Emmanuel," she whispered to the night sky,
I'm keeping my promise. I'm continuing the work. I'm seeing people. I'm teaching others to see. The revolution continues. And somewhere, somehow, she felt his approval, his gentle smile, his quiet affirmation. The next morning, Mrs. O woke up with an idea. She called Chidi, now her business partner and friend. "I want to write a book," she said without preamble. "A business book?" "No, a story. Emmanuel's story, the Gateman revolution. I want to document it all, not for fame or money, but as a record, as a teaching tool, so that future generations can learn what we learned." Chidi was quiet for a moment. "My father was just saying the same thing. He wants to be part of it. He wants to share his journey from skeptic to believer." "Then let's do it together. You, me, your father. We'll tell the story honestly, our failures and our successes, how we were blind and how we learned to see, how one old man working as a gateman changed an entire city." They started writing that very week. It took a year to complete. They interviewed hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Emmanuel. They collected stories of transformation. They documented the spread of the Dignity Academies. They traced the economic and social impact of treating people with respect. The book was called simply The Gateman's Gift, One Man's Revolutionary Vision of Human Dignity. It became a bestseller across Africa, not because it was cleverly marketed, but because it told a truth that resonated with millions. People were tired of the old way, tired of the oppression, the dismissiveness, the crushing weight of being unseen. They were hungry for a new way, and Emmanuel's story showed them that new way was possible. Schools used the book, churches discussed it, companies trained their employees with it, families read it together, and everywhere the same conversation started. Who have I been overlooking? Who have I failed to see? How can I do better? The book's success led to something unexpected. A young filmmaker named Kemi approached Mrs. O. She wanted to make a documentary about the Gateman revolution. She wanted to capture the stories, the transformations, the ongoing impact. Mrs. O agreed immediately. The documentary took 2 years to complete. It followed multiple storylines. Blessing, the former housemaid, who is now a communications professional. Idowu's son, who had gotten into university to study engineering with Chief Okonkwo's support. Adekunle, the security guard, who had been invisible for 20 years and now ran training programs for other security personnel. The children at the Dignity Academies, who were growing up believing they mattered. The documentary premiered at international film festivals. It won awards, but more importantly, it sparked conversations globally. In Kenya, in Ghana, in South Africa, in poor neighborhoods across London, New York, Mumbai, people started their own versions of the Gate conversations. Emmanuel's simple message, see people, respect people, recognize everyone's inherent worth, was becoming universal because it was universal. Every culture, every society had its invisible people, and everywhere those people were waiting to be seen. 5 years after Emmanuel's death, on the anniversary of his passing, Lagos held a citywide Day of Dignity. Schools, businesses, government offices, everyone participated. The challenge was simple. Spend the day truly seeing people, learning names you didn't know, having conversations with people you usually ignored, recognizing someone's contribution, saying thank you to people who usually go unacknowledged. Mrs. O spent the day visiting all the Dignity Academies, now numbering 40 across the country. At each school, she asked the children what dignity meant to them. A 7-year-old boy said, "It means my teacher knows my name." A 10-year-old girl said, "It means when I talk, people listen." A teenager said, "It means I'm not just a poor kid from the slum. I'm Chinedu, and I have dreams, and those dreams matter." Each answer broke Mrs. O's heart and mended it simultaneously. These children understood. They got it, and they would grow up treating others with dignity because they had been treated with dignity. The cycle was changing. The culture was shifting. That evening, there was a gathering at Emmanuel's grave. Not a sad vigil, but a celebration. Hundreds of people came, bringing stories of how the Gateman revolution had changed their lives. Mrs. O spoke, her voice carrying across the crowd. Emmanuel, 5 years ago, we lost him physically, but his spirit, his message, his revolutionary vision lives on. It lives in every person here. It lives in every Dignity Academy. It lives in every workplace that now treats all employees with respect. It lives in every home where domestic workers are valued. It lives in every greeting exchanged, every name remembered, every human being who is seen. She paused, emotion thick in her voice. Emmanuel taught us that revolution doesn't require violence or upheaval. Sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply treating people like they matter, simply seeing them, simply acknowledging their humanity. So tonight, let's make a commitment. Let's promise Emmanuel, and let's promise each other that we will continue, that we won't forget, that we'll teach our children and our grandchildren, that we'll build a society where everyone is seen, everyone is valued, everyone is treated with dignity. Not because it's profitable, though it is, not because it's efficient, though it is, but simply because it's right, because we're all human, because we all matter.
The crowd responded with a resounding yes. And in that moment, under the Lagos sky, surrounded by people from every walk of life, Mrs. O felt Emmanuel's presence, not physically, but spiritually, in the unity of the crowd, in the commitment to dignity, in the revolution that was still unfolding. The years continued to roll forward. Mrs. O grew older, grayer, but never lost her commitment to seeing people. Chidi took over day-to-day operations of the tech company, allowing Mrs. O to focus fully on the Dignity Movement, as it was now officially called. The Dignity Academies expanded to other African countries, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Senegal, Tanzania, each adapted to local culture, but all sharing the same core principle. Every child deserves excellent education delivered with dignity. The graduates of the first Dignity Academies were now adults. Some became teachers, returning to teach in the schools that had launched them. Some became entrepreneurs, starting businesses that prioritized dignity in their operations. Some became activists, advocating for better treatment of marginalized people. All carried with them the lesson they'd learned as children. Everyone matters. One of those graduates, a young woman named Amarachi, became particularly prominent. She had grown up in Makoko, attended the first Dignity Academy, excelled academically, earned a scholarship to university, and became a human rights lawyer. Now, at 25, she was arguing cases before Nigerian courts, fighting for domestic workers' rights, for fair labor practices, for dignity in employment. In one famous case, she sued a wealthy family who had imprisoned their housemaid for 2 years, treating her like a slave. The case made national headlines. Amarachi's closing argument brought the courtroom to tears. "My lords," she said, her voice strong and clear, "this case is not just about one woman's suffering, though that suffering is real and horrific. This case is about whether we, as a society, truly believe that every human being has dignity. Do we believe it only for the wealthy, only for the educated, only for those who look like us, speak like us, live like us, or do we believe it for everyone?" She turned to face the courtroom. "I stand here today because someone believed in my dignity when I was a poor child from a slum. Someone built a school that told me I mattered. Someone invested in me, not out of charity, but out of recognition that every child has worth. That investment changed my life, but it also placed on me a responsibility, the responsibility to fight for others' dignity as others fought for mine."
She won the case. The family was convicted. The housemaid received compensation and freedom. But more importantly, the case set a legal precedent. Domestic workers now had explicit legal protections. The invisible were becoming visible, even in the eyes of the law. Mrs. O attended the trial and wept as Amarachi delivered her argument. This was Emmanuel's legacy. This girl, who had once been dismissed as just another slum child, was now changing laws, protecting rights, demanding dignity for all. The revolution was alive and growing. 10 years after Emmanuel's death, Mrs. O was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors gave her months, maybe a year. She received the news with surprising peace. She was 60 years old. She had lived a full life. More importantly, she had lived a transformed life. She had learned to see, and she had helped others learn to see. She spent her remaining time saying goodbye, not with tears, but with gratitude. She visited each Dignity Academy, spending time with the children, reminding them that they mattered. She met with everyone who had been part of the journey, thanking them for their commitment to dignity. One afternoon, she asked to visit Emmanuel's grave one last time. Chidi drove her, now a man in his 40s, grayer but still carrying the commitment he'd learned 15 years ago. They sat beside the grave, and Mrs. O spoke softly. "Emmanuel, I kept my promise. The revolution continues. It's bigger than either of us ever imagined. It's changing lives, changing systems, changing hearts." She was quiet for a moment, then continued, "I'm coming to join you soon, and I'm not afraid, because I know I'm leaving the work in good hands. Chidi will carry it forward. Amarachi and thousands like her will carry it forward. The revolution lives." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you for being my gateman. Thank you for opening more than a gate. Thank you for teaching me what really matters. Thank you for reminding me that I'm human, and that's enough. That's everything." Chidi helped her stand, and they walked slowly back to the car. As they drove through Lagos, Mrs. O looked out the window at the city she loved, the chaotic, beautiful, complex, struggling, thriving city. She saw security guards at gates, really saw them. She saw street vendors, really saw them. She saw children and cleaners and drivers and people, all worthy, all deserving of dignity. "Chidi," she said quietly, "promise me something. Anything, Auntie. Don't let this movement die. Don't let it become just another organization, another NGO, another bureaucracy. Keep it alive. Keep it human. Keep it real." "I promise," Chidi said, his voice thick with emotion. "And tell everyone, tell them that the revolution is simple, so simple anyone can join. You don't need money, you don't need education, you don't need position or power. You just need to see people, really see them. That's all. That's everything." Mrs. O passed away 3 weeks later, surrounded by family and friends. Her funeral, like Emmanuel's, brought together people from every level of society. The president sent a representative. Amarachi delivered the eulogy. Joy, Blessing, Adekunle, Idowu, and hundreds of others whose lives she had touched stood together, mourning the woman who had learned to see them. But there was celebration, too, because Mrs. O's life had been a testament to transformation. She had been proud and blind, and she had become humble and seeing. She had climbed high and forgotten people, and then she had remembered and lifted others as she rose. Her life proved that change is possible, that no one is beyond transformation, that it's never too late to learn to see.
The dignity movement continued. Under Chidi's leadership, it expanded and deepened. New initiatives launched. The Dignity Universities, offering higher education with the same principles. The Dignity businesses, companies structured around respect and fair treatment. The dignity cities, urban planning that considered every resident's dignity, not just the wealthy ones. 20 years after Emmanuel opened Mrs. O's gate for the first time, Nigeria looked different. Not perfect, not utopian, but different, better. Domestic workers had legal rights and protections. Security guards had professional training and career paths. Service workers were recognized, valued, compensated fairly. Schools emphasized character as much as academics. Businesses measured success not just in profits, but in employee well-being and community impact. And everywhere, people were learning names, having conversations, seeing each other. The culture had shifted, not completely, but significantly. It was now socially unacceptable to treat workers dismissively. Companies that mistreated employees faced public backlash. Politicians who showed disdain for regular people lost elections. The invisible were becoming visible. Amarachi, now a respected judge, often thought about the chain of events that had led from Emmanuel's simple act of becoming a gateman to the transformation of a society. How one person's decision to stay humble had rippled across an entire nation. She shared these thoughts one evening at a gathering of Dignity Academy alumni. Hundreds of successful young people who had grown up being told they mattered and were now making sure others mattered too. Emmanuel didn't change the world with grand gestures, she said. He changed it by opening a gate every morning with dignity, by greeting people with respect, by refusing to let success make him forget his humanity. And Mrs. O changed the world by learning from him, by admitting she had been wrong, by transforming herself and then helping others transform. She looked around at the faces, all young, all full of potential, all committed to dignity. Now it's our turn. Our generation must carry this forward. We must teach our children. We must build our businesses and our careers and our lives on this foundation, that every human being matters, that dignity is not negotiable, that seeing people, really seeing them, is not optional, it's essential. A young man raised his hand. But Judge Amarachi, what if people don't listen? What if they don't care? What if the old ways are too strong? Amarachi smiled. Then we persist, just like Emmanuel persisted, just like Mrs. O persisted. Change doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments, in daily choices, in consistent commitment. Every time you greet someone with respect, you're changing the world. Every time you learn someone's name, you're changing the world. Every time you treat a person with dignity, regardless of their position, you're changing the world. She paused, letting her words sink in. The revolution is not an event, it's a practice, a daily, moment-by-moment choice to see people. And as long as even one person makes that choice, the revolution lives. The gathering ended with a renewal of commitment. These young people, raised in dignity, would raise their own children in dignity. They would build careers and businesses and families that honored every person. They would teach the next generation what Emmanuel and Mrs. O had taught them. The revolution would continue, and somewhere, somehow, an old professor and a transformed CEO were smiling. Because they had learned the greatest truth of all, that real change doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the heart out. It comes when one person decides to see another person, really see them, and then that person sees another, and another, and another, until everyone is seen, until everyone is valued, until everyone is treated with the dignity they deserve. Not because of what they do, not because of what they have, not because of their titles or their education or their bank accounts, but simply because they exist, simply because they're human, simply because in the eyes of God, in the truth of the universe, in the reality of our shared existence, we are all equal, We are all worthy. We are all deserving of dignity. This is the lesson of the Gateman, who was really a professor. This is the gift he gave to Lagos, to Nigeria, to Africa, to the world. This is the revolution that continues, generation after generation, heart after heart, person after person. The revolution of seeing, the revolution of dignity, the revolution of remembering that we're all human, and that's enough. That's everything.